was never a moment when this isn't appropriate. Just incidentally, this is going to be a hodgepodge because I wrote this out very carefully, and I've got a lot of slides, and in order to go through them quickly, which I will have to do, I will give you a different talk, which will be not quite as cogent. But anyway, I'm interested in the way we understand things, especially the way we understand ourselves in the world. And I think we do this mostly through analogy and making models, in a sense. Models are another kind of analogy. And so I figure in order to understand understanding, I need to make models of models, which is basically what I do. And this is a series of pieces I'm going to show you that culminate in this piece, which I call Conservation of Intimacy. And but in all of this effort of mine, I owe a huge debt to Etienne Jules Marey, French physiologist, 19th century, and the father of motion pictures, and really the father of modernism, except that he doesn't really have credit for that. If you know Marey's work, you probably know these images. They're multiple exposures on a single plate. And Marey, Marey was, I guess now it's not working. I guess you point directly. Okay. Marey really was an engineer of life. He was always inventing equipment and various techniques for trying to understand motion, because for him motion was life. It was the expression of the language of life. And he really, his centrality to modernism, I mean, you can in a sense see this because when you look at an image like this, you have a different sense of time than a more traditional sense. There is no past, there is no future, there's only a now. And it's a now, of course, that can't be held in any way at all. And these images became, Henri Bergson would use these images to describe what he thought of as a new sense of time. It was the modern sense of time.
So this is about the century, right?
What? This is, yeah, so this is, Marey started doing these things in the 1860s, and then the photographic work by the 1870s and 80s. Anyway, I'm going to try to keep moving, but yeah, later we can talk more about Marey. Marey goes on forever, as far as I'm concerned, and I have only scratched the surface. But here you can see one of Marey's images being used by Duchamp, Marey had this sense that he was actually trying to help artists to understand motion so they could portray it more realistically. And what he got instead was something like Duchamp's, nude descending a staircase, which in fact, because what Duchamp saw was he saw this new sense of time, and he saw the body in space in this sense of time, and exactly what Marey had done, but hadn't realized what he had done. I first came across Marey's work when I saw this device, which is a device to measure what your lips are doing during speech. And I saw this at the Bakken Museum in Minneapolis in 1994. And before he got into the chronophotography, as he called it, those images, Marey was using these pneumatic sensors that he called tambours, little drums. And the little drums covered with a latex sheet and transmitting the air impulse through these tubes, so that you would get this record of. You could also use these then to write, to work a pen and write the movement, the actual force of life. He would use these sensors everywhere. I'm going to show you some examples. Marey's first work, that he was doing was his really cardiology and circulatory work. If you look at Ludwig's, Carl Ludwig from 1847, he had a pulse meter that you would basically, open up the, I think it's a dog's carotid artery, and put a sensor in there, and then he would get it to move a column of mercury, which then would write. And not a very useful diagnostic tool, this, because it would at least lead to the death of the patient. Marey had a pulse meter, a sphygmometer here, which which rode on a smoked glass slide, and basically Marey invented medical imaging. And about a year after I saw Marey's first work, a new form of medical imaging, an echocardiogram, found that I had an aortic aneurysm and I needed to have surgery immediately. So, I sometimes like to say I owe my life to Marey. Certainly I owe a lot of the work I've done. So after surgery, I wanted to do something, do a piece that was kind of Marey inspired in some sense. And Marey would do simulations like this. This is a very early one of cardiac function. And over many years, I did my first Marey-inspired piece. This is, I call it the etiology of innocence. Because of this kind of particular connection of sophistication and wonder that Marey managed to encompass in his work. So on the left, you see a Marey engraving that I made a much larger scale version of the apparatus he was using. And this is a video of the piece in action. We'll see how the microphone picks up the audio. Not very well. Okay. So you see, I'm cranking this oversized heart, elephant's heart or something, and at the same time as I'm squeezing these organs, I've got this belt. I had something rotating, I added a belt to it. The belt with a nice loose end, I like these loose ends, goes into the other room, another chamber. It's a heart piece after all. And in the, and it goes this bouncing object here in the, that is being powered here. It's a heartbeat generator. Now this you're not getting because laptop speakers, no bass, and this is all bass. But this is that sound you would get that if you maybe had that privileged position of being able to lay your head on someone's chest. That's the sound of it. You might also hear the stomach gurgle. But in fact, the gurgler is there really to provide a back pressure for this throbbing organ in the jar that I have here. We'll zoom in on here. So all of this is being done by the person cranking the mechanism from the outside, but they can't see anything that they're doing. So they need to take turns with somebody else. So it really takes two people to have the experience of this piece, which I think is just about right for a heart piece. And the piece, this is another installation of the piece. The piece is really quite fragile. All the parts are fragile, although it's amazing how it kind of stays in there. It has this sort of tenacity. It, it's, I think of that combination of tenuousness and tenacity as being very human. And also the fragility. I think that when so I actually am a mechanist. I believe in the mechanical model of human beings, but I think that I don't believe in us as ideal machines. We are real machines, like my car. It is breaking. It needs maintenance. It always needs to be fixed. So our relationships fail. Things break down. Everything. The way that things fail is kind of a great interest to me. And in part because I make these machines out of the wrong materials and they are always breaking and failing, and I'm always fixing them and leaving the record of all of that in there. I can't remember what I was going to say exactly here, but anyway, I had a very clever, cogent kind of statement. It's gone. But eventually this led to my conservation of intimacy, which you can see here in an installation for 01 in 2010. But this piece, the conservation of intimacy, you really have to participate in this piece to understand it in any significant way. It's not a matter of witnessing, seeing something from the outside. It's a matter of being in it and experiencing it from the inside and understanding it because you're part of it. You can operate this piece with one person. you can see I'm pointing, the images I'm pointing at Marey technology here. There's some sensing tambours down there. But the piece works much better with at least 2 people operating it. And the fact that things work better with 2 than with 1 is one of the points of the piece, I think. This is another venue. This is at Ars Electronica in Austria. I don't remember why I put this in now. It was a placeholder while I was talking about something that I don't remember. I should just go over and look. What did I say? Oh yeah, so I also have this other aspect of these pieces. If you look at this huge tower, this tower is actually there for a purpose. It's also a Marey-style mechanism. Here's one of Marey's experiments with bird flight, using pneumatic tambours to try and understand the flight of birds. And you can see that pretty rapidly this bird's going to fly off and tear the apparatus off the table and mess up all the readings. So Marey created this scaffold that the bird could fly around in indefinitely, but the scaffold would hold the equipment and the bird could fly and yet pick up all the data. This is basically what the tower is doing here. I've got this bench that people can sit on and move around on. And I've got the tower with all the tambours and the linkages. And you can see how they then give me my data. Some overhead tambours. So this is a piece called Conservation of Intimacy. You know, Marey was actually at the point when Marey was doing his work, it was a point where the conservation of energy was kind of a new principle. And this idea, you know, so I'm sort of suggesting with my title that if there's a human universe that we can understand laws about, perhaps intimacy might be something fundamental to that in the same way that energy is fundamental in the physical universe. Well, anyway, here's a video of the piece in action. So, a couple move around on the bench. They're working these tambours. Behind them, they're working tambours above them and below them. But some of the tambours are making this tray move in another room, which they can't actually see, but on the tray are these balls. And as they move, they can watch a surveillance of the balls moving. So they can kind of see, it's another form of measurement, if you will. You know, they can kind of see, there's a little delay there, and these things, I've adjusted it so it kind of looks like they're floating. There's a third person pulling paper down. And if the couple on the bench moves side to side, they blow in the ear of the third person. So you get a little menage a trois. And there are also these, you can see the overhead tambours being activated here by the bench coach. And then they're also writing on the paper as it's coming down the wall. They're writing the left, right, up, down, front, back. You know, it's just your basic X, Y, Z coordinates. No W. And then the paper, you know, makes a nice kind of paper fall. What?
The travel of the paper is W.
Yes, I guess that's true. Yeah, that is, or time anyway, which, you know, it's geared down such that, you know, it's pretty much the same. You know, almost everyone riding the bike gets the same, more or less the same rate, I think. Close enough. I added the paper trail to this piece after its first, because I wanted to make some kind of satiric commentary on how science will investigate everything, even intimacy. And, you know, but, you know, if you look at the paper, you can actually, and you read it, you can actually tell something about how the couple is getting along on the bench. if you know, like where I've got the arrow there, you know, all 3 of these, left, back, front, right, all 3 X, Y, Z coordinates are in action at one time. If that's happening, then the couple is kind of dancing with each other. If you only have one and then another and then the other, there's somebody in charge, you know. And you know, so they're very kind of different relationships, you know. And this kind of idea of discovering things like this, you know, I mean, you know, I rely on this kind of discovery. It's something like this Gary Larson cartoon here. Yes, yes. I know that, Sydney, everybody knows that, but look, 4 wrongs squared minus 2 wrongs to the 4th power, divided by this formula do make a right. And, you know, this is sort of my motto. You know, I mean, I gotta find the right combination of wrongs. So a lot of my work is about groping, trying to discover things as I kind of grope through to the truth of it. And, you know, of course, touch and truth have been connected for a long time. Here's the doubting Thomas trying his hand at it, and the touchstone to, you know, get the sense of the quality of the gold that you might be using. Touch can also be possessive. That's the way I think of what this middle-aged baby Jesus is doing. And Joseph, meanwhile, is completely untouched by any of this. Anyway, this image, for some reason, made me think of Jean Piaget, you know, because Piaget has this idea of the child as a kind of an embryonic scientist who's developing, you know, as he explores the world, he gets an understanding of it. And his understanding, and Piaget's understanding of this, he preferred the title genetic epistemologist for himself. He didn't like the idea of child psychologist. And there are a lot of great Piaget stories, but he had this sense that you know, that your initial understandings are touch-based; they're concrete operations, and in fact, you know, this is some research done somewhat later. I don't know the date of the actual research, but here's a child hooked up to an apparatus. Kind of looks like my work. You know, and you can see the patterns that the child is actually working through some kind of concrete operation with this object that it's exploring, the bell. And so I think of my work as tapping into this. You know, we at some point get to what Piaget called formal operations in our understandings, but we don't lose the childhood understandings that we had. And I think that when people start playing with my work, they start to understand things again, or they remember again, you know, how they understood things as a child. And I think these childhood understandings are actually the answer to some paradoxes, but that's a subject for another talk. This is a piece about touch called Making a Point of Inflection, which actually has a mathematical connection. And, but that's, anyway, here's a video of this. This piece is about relationships. And it's got 2 sheets of latex with an air gap in between them, and I'm pumping air into the space in between. And that's a mouse ball. Make excellent valves. This is a little kind of masturbatory thing here. Latex is very sexy, but, you know, stuff. But, you know, when there's another person, it's a little more restrained. And but when you have 2 people in this, there's always something that comes between them, maybe just this little bubble of air, but eventually, you know. So anyway, this is very safe sex. There's 2 layers of latex here, and an air gap. This is sort of an all-male competitive version of that, and the gaming that sort of can you get my hand? Okay. I don't know, I didn't look at my time. Another one of Marey's major contributions to modernism has to do with the nature of work and his metaphor of the human motor, you know, which, and some of Marey's research was into the problem of fatigue, which was a huge problem at the end of the 19th century. Of course, it's not a problem now. But it was a huge problem then, and some people at the time were even connecting it to the second law of thermodynamics, whole other thing. But anyway, in his work and trying to understand this problem of fatigue and trying to understand, you know, man in the workplace, basically Marey was approaching this whole problem of how the problem of modernism. What do we do with the technologies? How do we relate to the technologies we've created? What do they do to us? How do we control them? How do they control us? All of these kind of questions. And you know, time motion studies came directly out of Marey's work, this whole mechanization of labor. This is a piece of mine that peripherally relates to that. It's called The Theory of Entanglement. And it makes a reference to quantum entanglement, obviously. I'm trying to make a social analog for that. Because I think, okay, in quantum entanglement, you've got some particles like electrons that share a history. And because of this, they will always behave in sync somehow, no matter where they are, even if they can't communicate. So I'm wondering whether maybe I can, oh, that was in my living room. I was testing the knitting machine. Here is the piece in its first show at Liverpool. It also has a knitting machine built into it, so it's another kind of entanglement, if you will, another kind of knot that's happening. So let's see. I don't remember. Oh, so I'm thinking that maybe, with people cooperating to get my piece to work, maybe they will form a bond in the same way that the electrons have this kind of connection. I mean, it's a metaphor. This piece is powered by these two bikes on the floor. You can see the knitting just starting to poke out of the bottom of the apparatus there. So here's a video of the piece in action. Now the two bikes have different sized pulleys on them. So one person has to go faster than they want, the other one has to go slower than they want. So they have to accommodate to each other. That's one of the things that the piece starts doing.
Where's the sofa then? I never did think of that.
Okay, so the sofa is the key thing.
Yeah, it's going down to them there.
Because there has to be somebody sitting on the sofa doing nothing for the piece to work. And a friend of mine pointed out that this is a metaphor for capitalism. So no matter how much riding the bikes, this is, I don't actually have good video of this, but you sit on the sofa, you engage the clutch, the thing starts knitting. The actual knitting machine worked much slower than this. This is knitting about one line of knitting every minute. When all geared down, the piece would knit one line in 20 minutes. And yet, by the end of the show, I got probably about 20 meters of knitting done. So I took my friend's advice and I added labels to the piece. So the people on the sofa are labeled as capital. The knitting is the craft, and the labor, there are tags like you can see for the labor, hanging over and around. And so fortunately, Liverpool is not far from Nottingham, where the frame breakers, the Luddite rebellion of 1811, they were busy breaking the weaving machines that were causing them to no longer be artisans. They had to be just machines working in this factory. So so that was kind of fortuitous. Luck is how it goes. At V2, when I showed this piece next, they got into lots of great arguments about between the capitalists and the laborites. So I'm going to end with this. Is that what you're wondering when I'm ending?
No, I just don't want us to get kicked out.
Yeah, we're ending. This is a piece of mine. This is sort of my most perverse use of Marey technology. So with apologies to Marey and Irving Berlin and Fred and Ginger, this is my version of cheek to cheek. So you put this headset on, and you'll see I've got these Marey tambours. I've got some below your lower cheeks. And they push air into these tambours against your upper cheeks. So you can literally dance with yourself cheek to cheek. And this smile, the Mona Lisa smile, this is the explanation of the Mona Lisa smile. And this is the audio. I have a lavalier mic on. This is what it sounds like when you're sitting on it. So anyway, there's my website. Lots of videos, more stuff. etc. Thanks.